Yeah, I think that what oftentimes happens with money, especially in relationships, we're talking about a husband-wife scenario, that there's this natural division of labor, right? We don't all do the same chores in equal measures across the household. We basically carve them up. However that comes about, it comes about. Oftentimes, just unsaid, we naturally gravitate towards certain things in the household, and money becomes one of them. And we can look at money on two levels. One is sort of the day-to-day spending, so the wallet or the purse. And then you have the big picture items such as investments and taxes and insurance and those types of things. And so what tends to happen very naturally is that women naturally gravitate towards the purse, the day-to-day spending, and the husband tends to gravitate towards the big picture items like investments and insurance and otherwise. And it just becomes one other chore, one other task to be done in the household. And they don't talk about it. You don't sit there and talk each week about like, hey, here's what the grass is going to look like, or here's how we're going to handle these other chores. You don't have conversations around them, and we don't have conversations around money either.
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that you're here, and I hope you've been listening to the podcast. There's such a variety of financial education and different topics on the Money and You Show, and I feel like it's becoming an exciting platform where you can just get a very good, comprehensive, sort of overriding education in many financial areas. And then whatever interests you, whatever strikes you, or whatever you need, you can go and further, dig in other ways, whether that's talking to me or talking to the guests that I am presenting, or just doing your own self-study. So it's great to keep learning about money, and that's what Money and You is all about. And with that, I have a fantastic guest today. I've been so thrilled with the guests that are coming on the show. They are so smart and so insightful and so interesting and truly heartfelt. That's one of the things that I've realized about all the guests that are being attracted into the show for some reason are truly people trying to help people and really do this work from their heart. So I think that's not necessarily the entire financial industry. So I'm very happy that people like our guest today are doing work in that manner. So I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, Ed Vargo. Ed is the co-founder and president of Burning River Advisory Group and EnlightenHer, a community devoted to money mentorship for women. With more than 24 years of experience in the financial services industry, Ed strives to help women develop a long-term financial plan for every stage of life, including retirement planning, college planning, and transitioning successfully in the case of death or divorce. Ed's passion for helping women with their finances stems from his family life. His mother, an immigrant from South Korea, had 4 children with his father. After getting a divorce, she lost custody of her children due to her inability to support her family financially. Her unfortunate lack of financial literacy fueled Ed's passion to help women become empowered so they can move through divorce confidently and without fear of losing their home or children. Ed is married and has 5 daughters, ages 19 to 24, who he's raised to be financially empowered young women. As a family, they enjoy hiking, theater, movies, and travel. Ed, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm very excited about what you're doing and the reason behind it. I think the why behind what people do is so important to talk about and really I think is just an important factor, even when you're hiring a professional, to know why they got into this and why they're doing what they do, because I think that really speaks to their values and their dedication to what they're doing. So I really admire what you have going on here. So why don't you, I mean, I've told a little of your story, but do you want to elaborate a little on kind of what you picked up on from growing up in your family?
Sure. Well, the thing about my mother's situation was, I guess it's our situation, not my mother's situation, but particularly from her lens, is it took me a long time to really realize what that must have been like for her. As a kid, I think my parents got divorced when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10-ish in that time frame. And it's one thing to look at the world from that lens. My mother, in essence, left the household, and then my dad raised us. But I had no idea the real story behind that, like how it got to that point. And so it was many, many years later. I was probably, I believe, in college or even beyond that when I first really knew the story about how that all transpired and how my mom's lack of financial knowledge and understanding of the divorce and legal system. Certainly there was a language barrier. She never read the language, didn't write the language. And so at the end of the day, she was at a major disadvantage when it came to that divorce process. And little did I know when I got to my professional career, doing the work that I'm doing today, how meaningful and impactful that experience would have in my life today. Because when I go into a situation, particularly for divorce, and we work mostly with women and entirely with women on the divorce side, I go in with that lens. I go in with that understanding of just how bad it could be if you're not prepared and ready to fight and do what you need to do. And my mom's lack of knowledge and understanding, and certainly there was a cultural barrier there. I mean, she thought she was doing the best things for her kids, very deferential, but I could only imagine what that must have been like for her, a mother, to say, to anyone here, you can have custody of my children because I think it's the best thing for them.
Wow. Yeah, that as a mom, yeah, I can feel the angst that must have occurred for her. So, but okay. So from there, what was her journey? Did she end up learning more on her own about finances, just out of curiosity?
No, unfortunately not. It's still that language barrier that's there. Again, she hasn't been able to read or write the language. I
Yeah.
look at my mom and I'm a bit of a marvel because she's been able to survive and get by, and she has a pretty good existence today. She's remarried for probably the past 25 years. But from the money side, I mean, she has some understanding of it, but not really like what I would like my girls to have. So I have my 5 daughters, as I mentioned. I look at like the best of times and worst of times. I hope my girls can embody the best of times when it comes to being money conscious and money savvy, because I look at my mom's situation as being the worst of times. So those are the parallel paths that we're trying to walk down and using and learning from both, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah, it's really it's very interesting if you look at it that way, from sort of one extreme to probably the opposite extreme, which is what you're trying to create for them. So in thinking about your girls, what, you know, from the when did you start helping them with money? What's the right age that you found? And also, what's the goal? Like how much do you want them to know, and what are you asking them, how are you asking them to learn it? Is it coming from you, or what's the process for this?
Sure. I think the learning process starts immediately. When I say immediately, I don't mean you're sitting down with a toddler or an infant talking about money, but it's how you model your behavior and how you model money. Your conversations around money matter. And those start from the earliest stages. So we didn't go into, raising our kids with the idea, oh, they're going to be financially savvy and literate, and we're going to start them learning all these formulas and all this financial stuff. That was way beyond it. We were surviving. We had 5 girls under the age, 6.5 and under, right? So every day was a fight, for survival, making sure they weren't killing themselves or running off and doing things. But the money side of that equation really is how do you talk about money? How do you engage with money? We didn't hide the money conversations in our household. Now, we were certainly conscious about certain areas that maybe we didn't want to talk about. But for the most part, we were open. If we couldn't afford something, we said we couldn't afford it. It
Yeah.
just, shy away from that. We didn't look at money as it having power over us. We
Mhm.
wanted to always talk about money in a positive way, or at least a neutral way, because I grew up in a household where money was talked about very negatively. My father was very bad with money, just one of those things.
Yeah.
And he always engaged with money in a incredibly negative way. So people who had money were bad people. They were just money hungry. And that made him feel better because he didn't have money. He wasn't good with money.
Right.
So his relationship with money was very poor, and it never changed because he never changed the way he engaged with money. And so with my kids, I wanted to at least start with it as a neutral, and then help them understand that we can turn this into a very positive thing. Money can enhance and amplify great things in your life, but it can also amplify and enhance bad things in your life.
Yeah.
So that money modeling and talking about it started very early. And then what I really thought, as a financial advisor, of course, I'm always thinking about the long term, and just knowing that the power of compound interest, right? And I didn't sit them down at 8 years old and say, here's the power of compound interest, but I did at 16.
Yeah.
I did at 16. Said that quote from Albert Einstein: the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. We went through a few numbers, just to give them some idea what that looked like. But most of the time, it was just my wife and I talking about money in a positive way, or again, given boundaries.
Yeah.
They needed to have boundaries and to understand that just because you have money doesn't mean you could just spend it freewheeling. And my trajectory with money is probably like most. I certainly have more resources today than when I started. So we were really poor, or really, I wish maybe really poor, but we didn't have much money with raising all those kids and starting a business. And as the business grew and I got further along, we've kind of come out on the other side to where we have more resources today. So just helping them understand and navigate how to engage with money in a positive way, and not being spoiled by money, whereas before it was a matter of survival, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I find it very interesting that really one of the foundational things that you were sharing with your daughters was really a mindset thing. It wasn't some practical money tip necessarily. I mean, the compound interest information came later and that was, but what you were really doing was setting them up to have either a positive or neutral feeling about money. And I think that is so, to me, that's so fascinating because I went through school and work just learning about, just understand how to manage money. And there you go, you'll be fine. But that's not the story. The story is first you have to have this positive outlook around money and abundance in general. And then the practical tips will help you get there. But without that, um, I think you really can take a lot of wrong roads. So I think it was sounds sort of instinctual on your part that that's what you started with from your background, but on a conscious level, that's a really important. If you do nothing else for your kids, I think that's a very, very important uh, assist when it comes to money.
That's absolutely true. Think about when you're a parent. I think most parents try to instill certain values in their children.
Mhm.
And that's not a tangible thing. Values aren't tangible. They're very much intangible. And we tend to think about money in a very tangible way because on one hand it is very tangible, but to your point, in many ways it's very much an intangible. Our money mindset, how we think about money, engage with it, those I think of it almost as a value system. And in fact, what we've done purposefully is tied values and money together. And so I'm not the first person, of course, to talk about it in this way, but the idea that our money, we have a finite amount of money and we have to be careful about our choices.
Mhm.
And therefore, if we're doing this the right way, the quote unquote right way, we would want our money, our spending of money to align with the things that we value most.
Mhm.
And so, as an example, vacations or spending time together. That would be one of the things we value, experiences over things. So we haven't been like a thing heavy family. The kids don't have the latest and greatest iPhones. We're not buying a bunch of new cars. Their cars are like pretty ragged, quite frankly, very purposefully so. But what we do is go on reasonably nice vacations. We do a lot of fun things. We spend a lot of time together. So again, I'm showing them and modeling, hey, I'm willing to spend a significant amount of my resources on these things that we do together, that we can create these memories and hopefully last a lifetime, versus it putting into this thing over here, which is going to have a limited shelf life and we'll probably forget it, a couple of weeks after it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so important, but that's a whole mindset thing. It has nothing to do with what you think a traditional financial advisor might talk about. It really is about mindset and behaviors. And I find that to be the biggest barrier when it comes to people doing well financially. It's not that they don't know, because a lot of people do know I can't exhibit the right behaviors. But even if you don't know, it's pretty easy to teach that stuff to others, but it's really hard to get the compliance to get people to follow.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the case with almost everything, whether it's eating or, playing better tennis. I mean, it's a really interesting look at our habits and our behaviors and what we want. And we say a lot of, everybody's saying, I want more money. And, but what are they doing? So there's this, and I think that goes back to mindset too, because the mindset isn't set up properly so that you actually move into action. So, I mean, a great mindset should lead you toward the right action and allow you to execute on that action. So I feel like this is just a fascinating way to reframe the whole money conversation, which I think is super important, because I do think your dad wasn't unusual. He was probably in the majority of how people think about money. I mean, it's just, and most of that just stems from fear, and any of us, I can go down that fear road as easily as anybody else if I start thinking certain thoughts about what might be coming or what might be happening in the world or in my own family, so it's very easy to do that, but the awareness of it, I think, is what is the most important thing. Because once you catch yourself doing it, knowing how to rework those thoughts is pretty huge as well. And I love what you're saying about the values, because you're also not saying don't spend. I mean, you're saying spend on the things that you value. And I think that's another important point, because there's so many beliefs out there, and some of them are the only way for me to get ahead in my particular profession or whatever is just to save my whole life and enjoy life, when I retire, which I personally don't agree with. But so I just love the fact that you're focusing on these mindset things. So with that, that is the foundational piece. I do want to move into some of the practical things, especially for women who, the other thing you brought up that I think is really interesting is having 5 kids, and especially under a certain age, and knowing how precious time is. There's very little time that somebody can, imagine a mom with 5 kids trying to also educate herself financially or take on the family's financial, management. That oftentimes just doesn't happen just because people are busy. So they turn it over to, a husband or whatever. So how would you generally advise people to balance that out?
Yeah, I think that what oftentimes happens with money, especially in relationships, we're talking about a husband-wife scenario, that there's this natural division of labor, right? We don't all do the same chores in equal measures across the household. We basically carve them up. However that comes about, it comes about. Oftentimes, just unsaid, we naturally gravitate towards certain things in the household, and money becomes one of them. And we can look at money on 2 levels. One is sort of the day-to-day spending, so the wallet or the purse. And then you have the big picture items such as investments and taxes and insurance and those types of things. And so what tends to happen very naturally is that women naturally gravitate towards the purse, the day-to-day spending, and the husband tends to gravitate towards the big picture items like investments and insurance and otherwise. And it just becomes one other chore, one other task to be done in the household. And they don't talk about it. You don't sit there and talk each week about like, hey, here's what the grass is going to look like, or here's how we're going to handle these other chores. You don't have conversations around them, and we don't have conversations around money either. That is a mistake. I think that's a very large mistake, because money isn't the same as any other task. And what we're talking about with, particularly on the EnlightenHer side which is our sister company, it really is about EnlightenHer is a women's first financial education company. It is really getting women to get women to help knock down the barriers that exist between women and their money and their understanding of money and embracing of money, and understanding that knowledge and power around money, or knowledge gives you a power when it comes to money, but it's not a nice to do. It's a must do. I think it's a survival skill. And we go back to that mindset again, but it really, if we think of as money and our engagement with money as a nice to do, I'll do it occasionally, or my husband will handle it for me, then you're really putting yourself at a major disadvantage. So I think the first step is to treat it very differently. I think women need to come to the table and just saying, I need to be a part of the money conversation, the big picture conversation. Because, and not that you should only do this because of what could happen, meaning we do a lot of work with divorcees, a lot of work with widows. And in those cases, it's very obvious where not having knowledge around the money really shows itself. I mean, that's crisis mode, especially in a divorce case where you're at a major disadvantage because you need to really argue and make a case for why you deserve what you think you deserve. And if you don't know what you have, if you don't know how money works, it's really hard to go in and be confident about what you're saying. And so I think that this idea of when it comes to money and engaging with money, women do need to really elevate it and think of it as a survival skill, something that's super important, that it's not a nice to do, and then go find the resources to help you, because as you've stated, it's time consuming, right? Like you can go on the internet and type in financial planning for women or financial literacy for women, and you get, hundreds of thousands of hits, and then you just shut down because it's overwhelming.
Exactly.
I think a great thing to do is to try and find a couple of trusted resources. Start small. You don't have to start big. You don't have to learn all these things overnight. Just start really small. Find a couple of trusted sources that in your gut feels right. Okay. And then you can, because what I found with women in money is, and I had a client tell me this, we did some research, and I was asking some of our client base, like, why did you choose to work with us? What did you think about money in the first place? How do you engage with it? And she said that we can find competence when it comes to money, talking about working with other advisors or the industry as a whole, but we're having a really difficult finding a connection. And it's very different. Men don't say that.
Yeah.
Men, the guys aren't saying, I want a connection with my financial advisor. Never happens. But for women, it's paramount. And so that gut instinct, that idea of I feel comfortable and I feel like connected to this person, I think is really important for women. And then you can go deeper to find out, does that person, how much does that person really know? And obviously it's a continuum. It's a process that you have to work through. You can't just have a connection and talk to somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. But I think it starts with the connection side, getting educated at a low level, and then continuing to ratchet that up over time.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's interesting. I also think that while men aren't saying it, they also want it. They just aren't necessarily in tune with that. I do think they work better or enjoy working with financial people who they do have a connection with. I think women off the bat sort of instinctively have I'm connecting with this person or I'm not. And when they're not, I think, some alarm bells go off and they feel like, maybe I won't be able to ask this person questions when I want to, or feel like they've got, they're treating me as well as they treat other clients, whatever it is. I think it's an innate thing, but I think it's a really interesting point. And the other thing I'm curious about is, because you're seeing both groups, what kind of differences are you seeing in the way men come into the office and the way women come in? I mean, I think women are typically more open about what they don't know, whereas men don't really want to walk in and go, wow, I don't know anything about money. That's not necessarily something a man wants to say. But what are you hearing? And what are some, men have the same issues in many cases. They either don't know much about money or haven't done the investing that they wish they'd done, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So this ties in with my earlier point about having a connection. And you're right, men do want a connection with their advisor, but it's different.
Okay.
So I'll give an example, and this is why this will touch in why the financial services industry historically doesn't work well with women. I mean, I think there's these polls that have come out that women feel more comfortable with a used car salesman than they do working with a financial advisor. I don't know if that's still true today, but it was true not that long ago. And the reason is when when a guy comes in and talks money, what tends to happen, again, we're stereotyping here, but it's pretty true. When guys come in, they're very tangible when they talk about money. They want to talk about the investment strategy, the philosophy. What are the benchmarks that you're using? What rate of return can I expect? They're talking about the data, the numbers. And if I talk about data and numbers in that way, we're definitely going to have a connection. Okay. So they want to be connected, but what we connect around is very masculine and a very male way of thinking when it comes to money. If I took that same approach with women, there would be no connection because women don't come in talking about the things I just mentioned. What women come in and talk about, say like, I need a plan. I want to make sure I'm doing the right things. I want to be able to not have to work forever. I don't really like this money stuff, but I want to be smart about it. But they don't care about all the charts, the graphs, all the percentages. They're not looking at comparative analyses between the benchmark. That just, it's whatever. It's like, what will this money do for me versus how much money do I have? And it's just neither way is wrong. They're both trying to solve a similar problem because both want to be financially smart. Neither side wants to work forever. Neither side doesn't want to be financially independent, but the lens from which they view the world is so different. And that's part of the issue with the financial services industry as a whole. It's a male-dominated industry, not a bad industry. It's a very successful industry. The language of money is very masculine. Why is that? Not because the industry is misogynistic. It just grew up because that's who had the money, right? Men were the ones who had the economic power in the early stages. The industry grew up. It was men talking to other men. And of course, that worked really well. And it worked extremely well until women started coming into the fold and gaining their economic power. So these men wanted to go out and serve the female market using the same tools that were so successful with men, and it's fallen flat and it continues to fall flat. And so that is something that's not going to change quickly. Well, you can't change the language of money. It is what it is. You can change how the way you speak about money. So as an advisor, we speak about money very differently we work mostly with women. So it's innate. We've built our whole practice for the way women think and engage with money. But we do have to come at it from a different lens. It's like we may not be able to come in through the traditional front door. We may come through the side door and still trying to instill the same goals and objectives, but a completely different way of going about it.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I can really see so much of what you were describing, and it's really interesting. It's a great take on how the business can serve both parties. And as you were explaining it, I'm thinking, well, really, women should be asking some of these questions. They should have the education to be able to use these financial terms and ask these questions as well. And men should probably be able to put it a little more into the feeling zone because really, they're wondering when they're going to get to, get out of the rat race or whatever it is that they're wanting. So, but to ask it in a way that it's an emotional thing. It's much less a financial question than it is an emotional question. But, who knows how well they're processing, putting those two together after they get the data from you. But I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this should fall on the side of the professional. At the end of the day, it's my job to find the right way to communicate with the person across from my desk. And that really should fall on the professional. But there's something that's not working. I think part of the reason is there's twofold. One is it doesn't have to. The industry is doing just fine the way it is right now, right? If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly, this is an interesting thing. It was probably 15 years now. I was at some executive coaching training. And so it was a room of probably 40 people in it. You had to pay reasonable sum to get into the room. You had to have certain credentials to get into the room, right? So um, we're all in there talking about business. And I was just at the point, I was beta testing this idea of, because we had organically grown our female client base. We weren't like, we didn't set out to do it. We
Right.
organically grew it that way. And I was like, I did some research on engineering the practice and realized we have all these women clients. And like, we're obviously what we're doing without trying is resonating with women. And so I was trying to decide, should we just go full force and just say, look, put out there that we work predominantly with women and then we're going to alienate half the men. Pretty scary thing and the men had most of the money. Long story short, I was at this executive coaching. We had to go up and give this little 2-minute speech about your business. And I said that we work, I don't know if I said exclusively or predominantly with women, yada, yada. And I kid you not, I had a dozen people come up to me afterward, which is very unusual to have anybody come up to you. And to a person, these are all very successful advisors, many way more successful than me. And it was the same cadence. It was like, are you really going to do that? And the first time they asked me, the first guy that asked me that, I was taken aback. I thought, like, wow, that's a very bold question to ask. He's like, are you really going to do that? I said, yeah. He's like, I think that's great.
Oh.
Which was right, which I was surprised. I thought he was going to knock the idea. And then the third part of this was I could never do it. I couldn't tell you how many people said the exact same thing. Are you really going to do that? I think it's a great idea. I could never do it. And so from that moment, I was like, okay, no more doubts. I'm doing this full head of steam.
Yeah.
And that touches on this. So these were very successful advisors who were really good at their craft, but they were saying that, look, I'm doing what I'm doing. It's working really well. I don't want to go over there and do that. And I think that's what you have today. You have a lot of successful advisors doing really good work, working with men the traditional way. Nothing negative about that at all. But they're not interested in adapting and changing their practice in a way that would attract more women. So when I say it falls on the advisor to change their conversations, sure, they're not alienating the women in their audience. I don't think they're purposely talking in a way that's repelling them, but they're certainly not speaking in a way that attracts them. And so, so that's one side. There's a lot of like, we should go serve this market because it's a really big market. They're going to inherit a ton of money. I get this stuff all the time, right? There's a lot of reasons why we should go do this. And yet the will to do it is not there because they don't need to. The second part is, though, you said it, and I agree that women are capable of asking the right questions. They are capable of learning these things. And I think we need more women to raise their hands and speak up and say, this is important to me. It's not okay to turn it over to somebody else in my life. It's not okay to be busy with life and neglect this area. It's really important that women demand more from maybe themselves and certainly of the industry. And I think that combination would be a powerful enough combination to actually move the dial a bit.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful explanation. And, you're making me think too, because while, we're talking about women as if, they know so little about money. I know plenty of women breadwinners, they're the one making the most money in the family, but that doesn't necessarily put them in a position of knowing what to do in terms of planning and retirement and all of that as well. So it doesn't come down to who's making the money in the family. I mean, that's a feature for sure, but it doesn't solve the problem that you're talking about, I don't think.
No, and that's even more so true, more so today than ever before, when women are the primary breadwinner. And for some reason, they're still perfectly okay with the husband taking over the big money decisions. Yeah. And again, I think part of it is just, look, it's a division of labor. We have this relationship, this partnership, which is working just fine. He likes this stuff more than I do. Maybe he has more time, whatever the case may be. But there's an easy, natural reason to just say, I don't want to deal with this stuff. There's another side, which we don't have enough time to get into this, but from a behavioral finance side, women do have a tendency, and this is the psychological studies on this, is that women have a tendency to gravitate towards people and men have a tendency to gravitate towards things. And so money is a thing. And so naturally, sort of biologically and ultimately behaviorally, women are much more readily will readily turn over a money decision or the managing of money because it's a thing and they don't connect as well with it. And the guy's raising his hand because on average, he's more comfortable with it. Now, there's no intellectual reason for that to be the case.
Yeah.
Right. So I see this with guys a lot of times. They'll be like, well, I should know this. And they're talking about money. And I'm like, well, why would you know this?
Mhm.
You know, there's some genes, some finance genes that says you should know this stuff, but they think they should.
Yeah.
I think that's that natural sort of gravitation towards things. And women tend to be a little less, I guess, hard on themselves in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of factors going into why it's easy for women to, and all these aren't like nefarious bad things.
Right.
Easy to fall into these sort of traps, so to speak, if you want to call them that.
Mhm.
We're trying to bring awareness and saying, look, you can do that in so many different areas. You can do that with the wallet.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day spending, you can absolutely do that. Turn it over to one party or the other. And that's not going to blow up your financial life if something bad happens.
Mhm.
But the big picture stuff, you've got to know about long-term savings. You have to know about, at least on some level, your tax situation. You don't have to be an expert in it. Just be aware. Know where your money's going. Those are the key pieces that you can't just delegate to somebody else. And if you delegate it to someone else, you need to have regular check-ins, right? So we do a lot of hands-on work for our clients. They do delegate a lot of the stuff that I just mentioned, the big picture stuff,
Right.
but they don't just delegate and never talk about it for, 5 years.
Yeah.
We're all the time. We're going through it regularly. I'm giving them reports. They're looking at the numbers. I mean, the average, husband and wife, they're not doing that. They're not sitting down quarterly to do a cap over what happened in their financial life in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
But it is something along those lines would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that suggestion. And yeah, you brought up something that, money being a thing. And when I started working with people and coaching them around money, the biggest shift I could find that would be a motivator to spend time is to not think about it as a thing, which I think is how we've all been thinking about it, but to think about it as a relationship. And then if you shift and your money is something that you're in relationship with, if you treat it that way, you need to pay attention to it and you need to get to know it and you need to check in and see what's going on because that's what you do in relationships. You don't. So I found that to almost give people to allow them to think about it in these ways and maybe have it be a little more motivating. This is fascinating. I'm really excited that you're sharing everything you're sharing right now. I do want to talk a little about the pre and post divorce situations that you're finding people in, and maybe how to. And I know there's not enough time for this topic either, but can you get into a little bit of how you're helping women, who are either thinking about divorce to know what to think about with their money, what to know, and then what's the difference between that and post divorce? I keep asking you double questions. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Well, on the pre side, I think that in all the places, disciplines, the divorce arena is unique. And it's unique because it's combining 3 separate items, if you so to speak, like a 3-legged stool. You have the financial side, you have the legal side, and then you have the emotional side. And all three come into play in a dramatic way when it comes to divorce. And I don't know of anything else that's really like that and has this antagonistic side oftentimes with it. So you're like battling someone else. So the stakes are really high when it comes to divorce, and when you're going and preparing for divorce or considering even the possibility of divorce, you gotta think about it like, I need to really learn about this. I need to know all there is about this thing called divorce and spend time. And then when you do it at the early stages of divorce, I always recommend do it as early as possible, right? Not that I think some people feel like if I start learning about divorce, I'm giving up on my marriage, or I'm going to be more likely to get divorced if I learn about this stuff. I mean, that's not really true.
Right.
You're just educating yourself and starting to get a sense of what's real and what's a fabrication or a misconception because there's so many misconceptions around divorce. People get snippets of information. They get it from TV. Nothing in TV is really like the real thing. Not when it comes to divorce. They talk to their friends, but everyone's divorce is different. Like moms will say every pregnancy is different, and they get that. Every divorce is different. And so,
and every state is different, right? The states have different rules.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. Not only the states have differences, but even the county. So it's getting that granular, and most people don't really understand either. So county, not just the state, but the county can matter a lot. So the first step is just to get educated about what is this thing called divorce. There's multiple ways to end your marriage. Divorce is an actual legal term. It's colloquially known as it encompasses all forms of ending a marriage. But it's a specific legal term, divorce, litigating, going to court. But you could go through a dissolution and have it done that way. So there's a lot of different ways to end your marriage, and you need to know what those options are.
Right.
So it really is, and it sounds so simple. It sounds so obvious when you're contemplating this, is to learn about it. But I can't tell you how many people come to me and are like, I have no idea where to go, what to do. They're overwhelmed. It's like, I'm even talking about women who initiate the divorce, because I think the statistics are overwhelming that women overwhelmingly initiate divorce more so than men do. So it's getting knowledge, find the right team. If I could, in a nutshell, I'd say do your own research, get knowledgeable, find some resources that you connect with, and then put together your divorce team. Your divorce team should consist of professionals like a family law attorney. The most important hire you'll have is probably that family law attorney, a financial advisor who's trained in divorce, like a CDFA, certified divorce financial analyst. I don't think that every person needs a CDFA, but I think a lot could benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And then a professional for your mental health. So therapist or divorce coach, even clergy can help you with that. So put that team together. That's on the professional side, and build your personal team. So you want to have, you want somebody who's going to tell you the truth, who's going to not just tell you what you want to hear, who's going to be honest with you, and you're not going to like what you hear from that person, but they're going to be the lens and tell you really what it's really like. You need to have one of those people in your camp. You need someone who's going to support you no matter what. You need that girlfriend that's going to say, or it doesn't have to be a girlfriend, male friend, who's going to be there, get your back no matter what. You need that person as well, because you're going to need some emotional uplifting. And I think those two pieces are really, really important. You have one person you could just talk to who probably won't really comment. They'll just let you get it out without trying to unduly influence you. I think that's really, really important. And you probably have those people in your life, and then understand who not to have on your team.
Yeah.
If you have someone who is always, riling you up, right? Like they're always looking to pick a fight. I mean, that person's got your back, but geez, they're just making it worse. So you have to know those people who are taking away, sort of taking away instead of helping you. So that's all the pre stuff. It's a long, arduous process. So you have a lot of time typically to figure these things out. Most divorce processes, from the moment you file or even have that first conversation, can be a year. Usually it's multiple years. But from the time you first think about divorce, it's probably, and by the time you first think about it to when you actually act, that's probably years going by there as well. So yeah, it tends to be a continuum. And if you walk down the path, you get knowledgeable, and it's okay. And then you step away, great. You just became much more knowledgeable about it. You never needed it. And I think, honestly, I think in some cases or maybe in many cases, people start to see how bad divorce really is. And they treat it with the respect that it deserves, because I think there is a tendency to think it's just going to be an easy process. I'll just find someone else. And, I don't think that's great when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. Wow, Ed, thank you. That's a lot. And very, very valuable information. This has gone so fast. We're about out of time, and I have about 100 more questions, but I really appreciate your insights. I really would love for you to help people know how to contact you and get more of this. I mean, what can you offer people who are listening to this going, wow, I really want to talk to him some more.
Yeah, as I mentioned, our sister company called EnlightenHer. So you can go to EnlightenHer.com. We have a ton of free resources there. We have some guides that we just created. We're just building that company up and getting information out. So that's a great way to engage with us. Get the free guides, get on our newsletter list. We're a women first education company. That's what we primarily do. Now I have a wealth management business, which is separate from that, but it really allows me and allows my team to go out and do good work in the field, to be more of an advocate for women. It's not a profit maker, a motivator. It really is about helping educate women to really engage with money, build that relationship with money in the positive way, and then see where that takes you. Because when you get control over your money, so many positive things can happen from that. And it's not like the more money I have, the happier I'm going to be.
Right.
That's not really the idea, but the more in control of your money you are, I think there is a correlation between satisfaction and confidence and being able to do and move forward in your life.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really worth working toward.
I couldn't agree more. And, speaking of the wealth advisory part of what you do, I would think most women, and men post-divorce, it's a little bit of a, restart. So, you need a new plan for that as well with however things fall out. So I would think that's a perfect opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What tends to happen on the wealth management side, a lot of women do come to us post-divorce because they have the settlement. They're like, okay, what do I do now? I was planning for this life with my husband and now things have changed. And they're really motivated. What's great about working with women at that stage in life is that they've kind of gone through fire, getting through this divorce. They're on the other side and they're ready. They're ready to get on with life, make it what they want to make it. And knowing that money, their control over their money and their decision-making around money is the conduit to be able to go do that. So it's a great, we love working with women who are in that mode, in that mindset, right? We'd rather not be the case that they had to go through a divorce to get there, but really it's about change. They're ready to take action. And that's always empowering for us because I feel like we're not fighting the client, right? We're giving advice. We're in a position to where we can really make meaningful change in their life. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to give financial advice. We're actually trying to give life advice that has a financial lean that will ultimately help them accomplish the things that they want to get out of life. So it's less, or it's at least equally about life as it is about money.
Well, that was a perfect way to wrap. So I'm not even going to say anything else. I'll just let you end with that. That's an amazing sentiment, really. And that is the way people, if they look at it that way, it's empowering in itself to look at it that way. And it's kind of comforting as well. I mean, that's a very, very nice way to see the whole situation. So Ed, thank you so much for your time. There's a lot more we could talk about, and I really hope that the listeners will get in touch with you, EnlightenHer.com, and use your resources and get to know you that way and your work. And just a lot of wonderful information today. So thank you so much for your time and for being here and sharing with us on the Money and You show. And people, I'll put in the show notes how to get in touch with you as well. LinkedIn, your website, anything else?
No, I think you have it covered.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the podcast. And I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast, and leave us a review and a rating if you are so inclined. And definitely share this show with your friends. This is one that I bet everybody listening can think of at least one person who would benefit from listening to this show. So please share, and we will see you next week.